Well, hello, everybody. This is MT Turtle. I am here with Dr. David Jubb, and this is Jubb Talk. We got a good one for you today, folks. It is called Lost Technologies. But before we get into it, Dr. Jubb, say hello to our audience, please.
I think it's really great to talk to your distinguished audience, especially all those that love you. The topic, I think it's a good one, mate. Idea that actually technology existed. I think people, it's something that is very interesting to our listeners. Yeah.
Now, with the ancient or lost technologies, what are some examples of some of these lost technologies that we can't seem to figure out?
Well, first you have to consider that magnicity was developed and sophisticated, and an insight into magnicity and the use of magnicity, especially static and dynamic current, to produce a whole array of various equipment and things to cut and to computerize and these sorts of things. It's just interesting, of course, like in the last show, I think I said, there's a cave painting, for instance, right? And the hand is put against the cave and you blow a bit of white, lime over it, yes? Okay. Make a nice painting of the hand, and then red and black, you can do the same sorts of things with ochre and charcoal. And you can see those things happening in a cave. A Rolls Royce just 99 miles away, parked at the same time. A tsunami comes, wipes everything out, of course, and what you could see maybe is the hand painting. And done, of course, at the same time as sophistication existed. So what goes on where people's reasoning has been is called ad hoc reasoning.
Okay, it's ad hoc
meaning,
reasoning.
Yeah, it's a reasoning that happens when you or I consider something, and it's sort of within a same time space, it seems, yes. And so we, via our selective bias, looking at something in a set way, yet, red mercury is one of the most expensive substances in the world back then.
Red mercury, okay. I didn't know there was different colored mercuries.
Only this that I could say that you've got substances which can spin, you see, as plasma and cause plasma to spin. And, when a magnetic current is put to it, it spins, and it can reach such high capacity that, it has inverse gravitational effect. And so this is just only one design out of the Vimanas, which, when somebody looks at this more technically, you can see that quite a few of those designs are absolutely capable of being able to have achieved, inverse gravity.
And this Vimana, that is an ancient technology that we have seemed to have lost, right?
No, the Great Council gets quite a bit of technology and kicks a lot off. You see the bell being produced and craft being produced, which in the Second World War and things. And so it's really quite an interesting technology to look into and things. And evidence existed from people who, like in India, flew inverse gravitational craft with remote control and things like that in the 1800s and things. And so there's a highly sophisticated past, and you or I or somebody, if you didn't look into what this is, so for instance, there's an astronomical astronaut sort of science and, texts and things that relate to different sorts of materials and things which could be used, and that and processing and things. And so, some things be cut with water, and so that it doesn't really need any heat, and other things can be cut just quick and simple, and heat is used, but it's cut underwater and things. You can cut things within 2,000th of an inch, you see.
2,000th?
Yes.
Wow.
And Like, right.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so you can cut things with such precision on a desk. Absolutely incredible. And there is no heavy industry there, you see, to cut those things. It's just very light on a desk. And precision parts like you've never seen, like, thousandths of an inch, and things, precision and this sort of a thing. You see, so to do those sorts of things, you really have to have a bit of a sophisticated past. And we look at it, you've got, as you listen into our story in the past there, you've got, Utton Shipton. That was a name of a person that actually, was a pharaoh relative and built everything. It's sort of the name for Noah that the Massa people had. So that's the name they used. But what they did was, it just means that too, doesn't it?
What?
Utna ship tin.
Utna ship tin.
Yeah, they shipped in tin. Tin was a word really for metal and stuff. It was really after that.
Okay.
And that's why Crete sort of gets, jumped on pretty quick, because you've got deposits of the beautiful substance you can make good metal from. And then also Afghanistan at the time was, mining things you can see, and they were all bringing that down, and that was being transported to various places. But it's just the very same beloved that are these minor majority that kept the technology through calamity. They were more able to, mainly because they connected the whole empire, which was a republic. And they're connecting the globe, and they did this with large ships and things. And so it was similar to like the ship that's cast up onto Mount Ararat, that Noah's story comes from. And you can see a campsite up there and what have you. Quite interesting, actually, and it's definite. It's like that's something that's a bit deep interest to me to go to look at and check out and things like this in the past.
Oh,
The
so you went
diameter.
there, huh?
I was interested to see, because I could see that it seemed that studies show that various places after the Middle East had got annihilated by the flood in 2807 BC, it got jump-started again. And you can see it gets jump-started from Mesoamerica, and so, you've got measurements and things like, let's say, we're talking about quite precision cut metal, you're talking about very highly sophisticated past and golden ages. We can think and we can document, absolutely no question about it, the various golden ages that have taken place in the past. Typically it was because peace, prosperity, people had a way to do things, which is what this work is about, because this is sort of what really goes on. But imagine just for a moment, mate, that you've got 12,742 kilometres, let's say, the distance exactly, which is between Tutican in Mexico, and it's exact, to the buildedness of the pyramids in Egypt. Platforms existed there already that were positioned there at least 12,500 years ago, because it was pretty much when the Sphinx gets lined up there. But you could see that maybe whatever they had there was all erased, of course, and those platforms were in an exact position relative to Orion in the sky, the stars, the northern star, and they were positioned pretty much exact relative. But you've got this position, which is the distance that the Earth has exactly to the sun. And you've got these things going on as coordinates and things, quite astounding. And of course, the Pyramid of Giza is time zero. But let's see if we could talk just a bit in a moment about, various things and how they made energy, which we can just a little bit.
All right. That's a lost technology.
Yeah. Do you think that because the Earth, right, when it starts to spin in a new plane relative that it got knocked over to, it sort of blows the equator out, and it blows the equator out at least 13 more miles out into the sky, sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
And so on the North and the South Pole, it's not into the sky as much as we've talked about a bit, okay? And so you've got an angle, which if you go from the equator, yes, to the pole, you've got a 51.5 degree angle, you see? And so that angle, you'd have to know what the dimension of the Earth is, and this to be able to have figured that out. So the cartography was just astounding, I'm just saying, okay? And we're talking about a highly sophisticated past. We're talking about what would you think that would have to be for someone to be able to measure the mass of the Earth and distances and things that's like
Well,
this.
you're going to need all kind of knowledge.
Well, you could see that specialization would be, right?
Sure.
Yes, and so something can have existed to have that. But you could see that in all these golden ages, there was something incredible that started from it and comes out of it, and most sophisticated types of things that we've ever had and seen in the world. But you've got this 51.5 degree angle, which is from the equator to the poles, and which is the measurement that's put into the pyramids of Giza and other stone structure and things. Also around the world, you've got base measurements, and you've got base measurements, and those base measurements all sort of have got various perimeters that are scaled down, and the circumference of those are all relate to more the circumference of the Earth and things. So you've got like 1 to 43,200 sorts of measurement sorts of things, and you've got the royal cubit, which is a measurement that's used. I mean, this you could see is something which is right across, and so like this is a technology to imagine this has gone everywhere, and so the idea that everybody was separated isn't right as a conformity, and that fusion is real and actual, and that does describe what we should have a conformity about more. But then it really is the latitude and the coordinate location really of the Great Pyramid of Giza, which is, it's got a latitude of 29.979258 degrees latitude, and that's the constant of the speed of light. It's similar to what that is in a vacuum. It's 299,792,458 meters per second. And so
That's fast.
Well, yes, it's slow, but okay. But it's only 7 times round the Earth in a second. So,
That's fast.
well, you can see that.
I can only do it in 17 seconds.
Anyway, so how long does it take for light? Like, we're just buzzing around the sun, and we're so close to it. Like, oh my God, it's like a fly. As an elephant's falling through space, and a fly's just round its backside, just buzzing around behind it as the sun is falling through space. You see, this is what's going on. And we're just like a gnat.
We're an ass gnat.
Well, we're a gnat, just like the Earth. It's like, oh my God, it's so small. It's like frightening. You can't even see it when you look. It's hard. You see? So in relation to the mass of the sun as it's falling, but all it is like, how long do you think it takes light to get to us?
Pretty fast.
No, it takes 8 minutes.
What? It takes 8 minutes from
Yeah.
the sun to here.
It's just such a short distance, but sorry, it takes a long time.
So light takes 8 minutes.
Well,
from the sun
light's
to here.
just sort of conducted at a rate of a porridness, like water would be relative or something. I mean, it's very slow, that's all. But anyway.
Will the sun ever find a landing spot if we're falling and we're following it? Will the sun ever find a landing spot?
Oh, what's in front? Yes.
Hello.
Yeah, that's what's in front of us, because we're falling, but
Okay.
it's just a way to think about that. But it's true. The south is sort of falling into a zone of avoidance. It's called the zone of avoidance. It's actually like a big line in the sky, where a fold has existed and where we're folded in there, and that's what that is really. It sort of looks like a line to us, but in fact it's a fold of a great lot of stars, which is folding back in there, like space is rolling, big huge columns of space. But that's a bit of another story, but it goes into a line of Laniakea, and that's in the heavens. I was involved where people were, which comes to name this, because it's sort of really giving a bit of credit to the Hawaiians, because they really had a great insight into, and various places, of course, in the Pacific, to count, for instance, up into the tens of thousands. I mean, and this sort of thing. But in our story, it's possible for us to connect mu a little more and this sort of thing in the past. But the pyramid's height is like 149.4 meters, which really is the distance in a numerical value of 149 million kilometers. And so in other dimensions, that includes like 0.382 and 0.618 and 1.618 and pi and 0.382, of course. These are fractals, which are absolutely you have to really have looked into this and seen things, because you could see that such an radical, incredible conditioning was existed in the ways, the dimension of the pyramid and inside the chambers and this sort of thing, you see. So the 0.382 is a fractal that's used today, of course, in a share value, and it gives you a relative total mass, of the pyramid, you see. It's 0.382 is used as a fractal that denotes like a movement against a trend.
Okay.
It's a movement against a trend.
That's a rubber
So
band
it's the Giza
snapping behind.
pyramid, is an energy generator. You've got a Giza pyramid, basically, that is a gravity water pump, which is below itself tuned. It could go at a faster rate, but it doesn't. It's actually tuned to go at a certain rate. And the sound that's directed back would be directed, once it was built, up onto the sarcophagus, caused a piezoelectrical conditioning to be existed on the lintels that were granite above, and you've got 5 lintels all in a pentatonic scale, basic and things, and you've got 2 lintels above that's on an angle that comes up into the pyramid. And so you've got these that resonate, and those granite lintels all would resonate from the water pump thumping below. They had waterfalls and things like this to hush the sound of it for people that would come to see it. But it was a monument of energy, which all around it was beauty, because you had, a greater tropical sort of an environment there, and you had the Nile that came right up to the base of the pyramid in these days and things. But you've got zinc chloride poured down one side, and you've got, hydrogen peroxide and various things poured down the other. And so on one side and the other, you've got a buildup of hydrogen inside, and that connects to what is the sound that would come up the grand staircase, sort of. And they had Holmet oscillators that were on the walls, which would create greater oscillation, and they had then reflectors that would reflect the sound in onto the sarcophagus, and that would resonate and create a shearing force because of its squared out shape that it was, more or less. And then depending on various things, they could sometimes put various things like radioactive material in there, which was easy for them to use. But otherwise it was really generating energy, and would build that up inside the casing of itself, and you'd have a bank of energy, which for 18 kilometers either side, more or less, where they had the line of these pyramids and things, you could have wireless energy quite
Has anybody
considerable.
tried to replicate this?
Yes, well, that's what's happening today. So we'll just relax. It's just sort of, I'm just sharing with you
No, man,
more
I'm ready
things
for it now.
about the B field and the A field. And then most people are really unaware of these things. You see, you've really got 3, molecule relative below hydrogen, and you've got north negative and south positive and neutral magneton, and they make up everything, you see, in gradation of everything. But so you've got the Pyramid of Giza, it's a gravity water pump, and you've got these blocks and everything floated up, in an elevator. So the ancient Kushmore sort of empire that built this out, unbelievable aqueducts and things, and they used the Nile water and lifted with water via the pyramids close to itself, a central shaft which floated, raised blocks up via water pressure. Quite easy to do, a vertical elevator from the water pump that they have underneath it. And that water pump built the whole pyramid, you see. And so all that was needed to slide, which they did, they slid blocks, and you could see that they did, slide blocks. There's all the material talc and stuff that they used to slip the blocks along slides to get to the place where they would then easily, load them and bale it so it had, air-like bags around it, basically.
Wow.
And they do that with reed and things. And so, and then they would float them up to the height which they would want to use, and float them out toward where they would be used, and situate them, as they needed to be. And that would just be, and that's the way they built the whole pyramid. All that was needed was a shaft of water, simple, incredible as this considerateness is, and gold and iron and silver and all of these things were being mined, of course, in Cornwall, which is some 27,000 years ago. You've got mining and things, and you've got maps, ancient, of course, which shows Doggerland and everything, and Fresland even, and where the French come from, which we could talk a little bit about perhaps. But you've got, just like what we're just talking about, a range of metals which have been found, of course, in enormous amounts of platinum at Nan Madol in the Pacific during the First World War, which they used in the Second World War and things just like this. And sort of metal needing very high temperatures to be created couldn't have been done just by carbon and wood and things just like that, though, so much. You really have to have thousands of degrees of heat, and it's only under certain sort of built types of conditions, like a rocket stove design perhaps, that you could melt various things that, you could use certain things to be able to do that with hard wood perhaps, but, oh my God, that's quite extraordinary. But like we said, if you've got cave paintings easily being done somewhere today, with ochre and lime and charcoal, and it's blown from the mouth, and it outlines your hand in the wall, but you've got a Rolls Royce just parked close by, 99 miles away. And so if a tsunami came, there kind of really wouldn't be anything left of the Rolls Royce, not a scrap of it and nothing. But of course you could see what could remain through time, and some of this sort of artwork which could be done today could be prejudiced to people into a future moment, because they wouldn't be able to tell what anything was that we did, because all of that stuff you could see would be just gone in a quick flash. It's just not a bit of it left. But it's true that we find screws in various places which, like, wow, how did they get there in rock? We find all sorts of things in coal seams, which now make sense more to you because we've had these calamities, but we've also had quite sophisticatedness. And so to find pots, beautiful, and things in coal seams and this sort of thing, and stone walls, how did they get there? But it's certain these things show that must have been a time past when coal seam and coal formed, and materials actually got blown into it, you see. So most items you could really see around us would certainly be gone. Here, like if 2,000 years passed and something happened, you'd find Mount Rushmore and things. But evidence like cartography and charts and things like this could be written onto stone and stuff, like in King's Jubba and Cleopatra's entombment, which I had the opportunity to be able to look into to some degree. But I did note that from what was seen, witnessed, and everything about all the various things that existed in there. There was a whole range of letters and things and charts and stuff in this, and cartography. Sorts of, imagine a library of things that was left there. And then not all of it was there, because some of it was taken to Spain, and there's a story a bit about all of this, But anyway,
do we have a library in Spain that's got all this information?
You've had people going after to try to find that, because what's gone on where this is, but certain it is. There's this bit of a background story where I was involved in investigating a little bit of this, and I put some of this into the Path of Hollow Bones, which, if that's interesting, people could read. Go to jubbtalk.com and to read this. But anyway, look, if you put a 51.5 degree angle into a well, and the stonework and things you have around it, you can tell that site was made more for very high energy. And it's interesting that you can measure a whole range of things which can cause someone to have like a score of 400 or something, for the value of life, versus, it's maybe minors. So sites were built in places and things, and where dwellings were and stuff, and it would be very considered sort of the geometry or the geomagnetic sort of spin and things of the property. But so this is a sophisticated technology, isn't it, when they could understand the spin of things. They also had rocks which they'd cut and left in various places, like in Crimea region and things, where a stone is, which is absolutely cut with incredible precision, and it's got a whole range of sorts of cuts to show
that when Crimea?
In the Crimea, and right below Sebastopol, there's a line of pyramids there. What? There's some 31 in the ground. And they form they still are functional to have water running through them and things, because they absolutely still have a massive anomaly of energy which could run the whole of Ukraine basically off itself, you see. So you've got great sophistication of the past, and when they go back to there, you can see this goes back 31,000 years ago, because you've got dinosaurs, and you've got things in the relief and everything. That would have existed, during the time where this is. You've got, these proportions of the moon and the earth. You've got the distances and things all figured out, and it's quite accurate. It's really quite remarkable, honest. And except for the growth of the earth and growing, in the past 75,000 years, of course, we've seen it grow 8 times the size it was.
Wow.
And during that time frame, we've had various things occur. And now you can look and see, of course, with carbon-14 at least, you've got a whole range of things that you can look to check to see. And you can confirm more, contextual validity and things. And these are things which sort of is pretty much done relative, because it explains how the Antarctic, for instance, can have been mapped, without ice, and these things, you see. Plus, when you connect flora and fauna together, you can see that Tasmania, for instance, was connected to the Grand Canyon at one point. And you've got bits of Australia, the northern part of it and things, that is up, in Asia, you see, in Myanmar, for instance. Yes.
Oh wow!
Right.
That's a dangerous
and
place.
You've got pieces of Australia and the ancient lands, of Sunderland, where people lived most, like huge matter of fact. You've got terraced areas in New Guinea and terraced areas in the Philippines, which radically, if those all just were harvested, and that could feed the whole world today. You've got a massive population that could have or would have had to have been able to produce Nan Madol, which is, if you look at that, you've got islands which eventually that they made, and they had all fresh water given to themselves where this structure was. I mean, it's this remarkable beauty and a Garden of Eden you could imagine it was in a time frame in the Pacific. And so, you've got the Pacific Ocean growing, you've got the Atlantic growing, and you're seeing these things happen in your mind. You're seeing the Earth having been knocked over, and then we could get into stories about those sorts of things and what goes on where this is. But basically, really, you've got wireless energy, and you've got reasons exist which, of course, a Rolls Royce could be parked not far away where cave hand paintings are being done today. In Australia, in Darwin. You've got pyramids, of course, in Australia and other places. And in Gympie, you've got evidence and you've got stories on rock and stuff about the shipping and things that came out of Sydney and was shipping everything. And certainly the shipping of all the yams that was shipped out of Melbourne and shipped out of other areas, especially Melbourne, because there was just so much yams. It was huge, and these were fields that were cultivated, gardened, and incredible, matter of fact, and maintained. But then all of this falls away, of course, when the Pope splits Spain and splits the world in half. And before this, Pope Boney has the domain, and then you've got it getting split up, and they split the world in half, and they said to Spain and Portugal, you guys go and you colonize the Americas, and you make everybody there a subject to the Pope, you see. But you've got a really incredible, huge machinery which assisted cut stone. For instance, large boat pits still exist there, which are where the saws were situated, and within them there would have been something like 27, feet in diameter or more. They would cut stone and things, and large synthetic stone also. And in a hydraulic system, of course, you've got a lot of used transport stone, and you've got dynamic magnetic current, of course, which is what the whole operation was come to be able to give you. A dynamic magnetic current, and you've used light more in the interior, and there's definite light bulbs and things that they use with glass, beautiful blowing huge glass, and that would pick up the energy within itself, and you didn't have to have wires, and so you've got the dark recesses of those buildings and things all lit up, and sourceableness as to how great past civilizations, of course, really got obliterated. But you've got a purposefulness going on where we are in the world, where a great council, more or less, CB Cower, which is a criminal banking cartel of a one world order, it's monopolised everything. It's really trams that used to be in all the older cities and everything, incredible it was, and mass transportation and everything. The more and Tartarian types of past Kush republic really was across Turtle Island and numerous other places around the globe. And so long before the World Fair comes along, it starts every time it ever is done, it's used, and it goes back a long, long way, this idea. But you'd see the World Fair come along and reset everything, and they'd apply Masons and everyone, and every more recent time you'd see the Jesuit and things such like this, and Zionist after this. You see, you really have a past which has been covered up by a monopoly which only has had self-interest to clear everyone away and only leave themselves with a few Chinese to help run warehouses and things and factories. So it's really hard-pressed for anybody to say that an octopus didn't put any tentacle over or anything, and that legal name fraud that's used today isn't a condition of some slave title given. Yet it's really wrong custom, isn't it, to only have contracted, latched people by forgery, you see. So you've got these sort of things going on, But you've got ancient Vimana, of course, in the aerospace and material, and they have quite studies in university that relates to this. And so it's really advanced in modern times. The Raja Loha was a heat-absorbing material, for instance. Could absorb heat, which we can understand how to use that today. You've got aircraft bodies also for re-entry. It's incredible. You've got these heat-absorbing materials. You've got aircraft bodies and clothing and food that could be used to sustain a flight for a little while and stuff, and time frames more or less that they would have these flights for. I mean, the Rakma and the Vyama, they were inverse gravitational craft, and it's just quite incredible that its library and things was what was used, of course, by people in recent times to be able to create various craft back again. And that's what happened in the 1800s, matter of fact, when the first, again, sort of inverse gravitational craft was made by someone that was remote controlled and flown. So mercury vortex motor, as mentioned, sort of red mercury and this sort of thing, was really highly prized, and it's a motionless Vyamana, sort of, which they're able to, because they're spinning so fast, past 10,000 revolutions a minute, that they become sort of more able to float more where space is in the gravitational field. And Vimana and Ramayana and the era going back 5,677 to 5,577, that time frame, you've got massive hot air balloons and things, you see. And this is what Cloud told me when people come into the center of the Mississippi there for ceremony and things. They would come from South America and everywhere.
Wow.
And they came like in mass, and they used kites in front, and these scout kites were flowing. You could learn about this in the Path of Hollow Bones. But balloons like Kite and things like that, which
and
Cloud...
Hollow Bones, that's a book you have?
They are a series of 26 books that goes into and has various volumes which explaining certain things about Wicca and everything, and where our culture comes from, which was what Cloud told me.
That's beautiful. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Before you know it. All right, we are back. You didn't even know we were gone. And check this out. Dr. Jubb, you visited a lot of these places where you've actually seen that there was some kind of form or lost technology that was used at these places. You were talking about some caves that were carved out in China?
Well, it's interesting because, you've got... You could reverse engineer what you look at.
Okay,
so that's kind of very simple to do. You could just see how, like Occam's razor could be used for someone just simply to do this. You're understanding, like, not leaving anything out, because, like, you're just looking to see, well, how could this be done? And how could it have been done? If it were done this way, then it would be done, like, with coolness. And you'd have air, and you'd have to blow things out, and you'd have to not have heat and things like that. Or, so there would be various sort of things that you could do. So, for instance, like, what I saw were parts and things that have been made by plasma torch, you see, very high jets of gas and molten metal, also vaporized, but with a blowing action that would blow the pieces, the little bits away from things. And you've got jets that are so small that are run through diamond and things very hard. You've got a 900 mile an hour sort of capacity, for instance, quite easy to build pressure up and then push it through what this does to cut. And so you've got Mach 3 definite, capacity to easily have. So Mach 3, you see. So if you can think about that, 3 times the speed of sound. Sound can be used to cut. You could just go zzz, used on a piece of metal, and slow but sure it's going to cut through something, you see. And so plasma torches were definitely used, and molten metal vaporized. Of course, you've got 900 mile an hour per hour sort of Mach 3 speed and things that cuts up to 2,000th of an inch. Can you imagine that? You've got an inch and you're just looking at 1,000th of that inch?
You would need some kind of torch with binoculars, right?
These were all set up, like, for instance, different sort of materials were used, and so some is conductive and easier to cut, and other things are not too conductive. But you can tune into the resonance of the material itself and cut it, you see, because it is magnetic. So just like we're only looking at things because somebody could have a little bit of an understanding about magnicity, and that there's no such thing as electricity, But that's in another moment. We could talk a bit about magnicity itself. Maybe that's another show.
Well, how about this? I mean, you talk about all these things that you saw. How old were these structures, or things that you saw that were worked on?
Okay. So, a watch which kept time into the centuries.
Wow, where'd you find that one?
In Switzerland.
No way. Is it a wonder why they're good at watches?
You've got a range of things which is to do with, like, you could look and see that you've got very fine material that's gone into this, and this is just remarkable. You see, it's intricate and remarkable, and you
How
can
old
tell
is this watch?
that you'd have to have you have to have microscope and telescopic sort of insight and various things that's like this, and definite. It's no question about it. It's
When
like
was this watch
arborariums and a whole range of things was all set up to actually grow plants and things that's like that, and give them at a different altitude and temperature zone and these sorts of things. And they would take plants from various places that grew and be able to learn how to grow them in different soils and things like this.
Last week?
There was just such incredible insight and technology that I saw in the past. And so, for instance, things that I saw from the glyphs and things from the Aztec, once I learned how to read these. But it was for me growing up as a young one, and coming into becoming a young man, and a fellow, Robert Lawler, an American, came and lived on Flinders Island, in Tasmania, where my family have an island off Flinders Island. It's like 7 miles away from where, at Trousers Point, sort of, he bought a property. And it's so beautiful, it's so gorgeous, like underneath the mountains of Mount Strzelecki, across the ocean. I'd see the profile of a face just coming up out of the earth, so magnificent out of the ocean, several miles away. But sometimes I could even hear people there as I was a child, that was 7 miles away. But anyway, it just was fascinating to me. Here's this very famous American that comes to live in Australia, and he marries, a famous Australian actress, and lives there. And it's quite extraordinary. I come to meet Robert, and he's the person who's gets sacred geometry, and writes a book in the 60s and finished it. Sort of comes along, and it's a book that influences the universities and everything at the time, quite considerable, and people are sort of interested in sacred geometry. And I'm carrying like a Nautilus shell around with me. It's just in this moment, and I was actually on the beach collecting them, and I looked and saw in his book once, I saw this, and I saw, oh gosh, there was all this, there was some Fibonacci stuff which interests me, because I was thinking I would like to know what it would be that was nature. Straight away off the cuff, I could only think about nature. And the square and the rectangle and pyramidal sorts of symmetrical stuff wasn't something too interesting at all. But I could see that something existed within it, and it would then cause me to be barked more into a math that really relate much more to non-Euclidean math, and coming to have such a deep insight more into non-Euclidean math and fractal.
I didn't even know
and
there
this
was
sort of thing.
Euclidean math.
Well,
much less 90.
well, it's interesting because when you study this first, of course, there's a story about what happened to me growing up a little bit about this, because I always thought I didn't know if I could count or not, and that would be the big question, because my grandparents would come over, one set especially, and I could hear them often ask my parents if he knew how to count. That would be, only I would hear things like that, and I would be thinking to myself, what did that mean? And I thought, well, must be something about my intelligence, I thought to myself, that's all, as a young one. And so I thought, well,
it all makes sense now.
This must be how to count. And so I was thinking to myself, how to count? And I said, and now I was thinking, to get to one, I was thinking, you start with something and you get to one, and I was get to 9 with my fingers. I'd see a set that existed with 9, and so it was just strange, because I couldn't ask anybody where you started, and it was strange to me that when somebody said 1, how could that be? Because something must have been before it, and then could we be ending up with extra units in what you count? Because of you're using something which is a placeholder itself, just only, but not a number itself, you see. And so if something is left over, nothing is, and so that's a placeholder, you see, basic in counting. And so I suddenly saw that there were things that was ridiculous. In fact, that was so. First, what the difference is in your non-Euclidean math, MT, is you cannot accept a straight line. Right?
Can't accept a straight line.
No. So you've got to have a math that's not got a straight line in it. You can't have any parallelness. You can't have any simultaneousness. You can't have less than more than 2 right angles. There's things that are law that relate to this, and that is the math, and you have to accept those principles as you look into everything that you do. And so after that, most people think, well, that's extremely complex, but you want to know something? The most simple thing that I could ever see, and it was the only interesting thing that I could think about, because I could see that I could get the area of a leaf, or I could use various math to be able to model like a smoke trail, you see. Yeah. And to create a manifold and a surface area and these things. And so it started to become interesting to me to what was the absolute universal shape. And that's caused me to search for this. And so eventually I do find this, and it's 351 degree circle, and it's got 26 divisions in that, and they go perfectly into this. And that's sort of like when somebody said don't go near 13, it would be because, well, 2 13s make 26, and there's only one number that absolutely does have something odd in it and also even. So this was something that,
unfortunately, due to things out of our control, we got to cut it short today. I apologize. But you know what? This is a subject that we have a lot more to say. We are going to talk about it tomorrow. It will be...
the pool sample.
Yeah, we're going to try to do it when this pool pump gets fixed. Anyways, we're going to continue Lost Technology. Dr. Jubb, take us out.